What you are about to hear will restore your faith in humanity and prove that sometimes the universe has a plan, even when we cannot see it. Sarah Martinez had been working double shifts at Millie's diner for 3 months straight, just to keep the lights on in her tiny apartment. But what happened on this cold Tuesday night would change everything forever. Sarah wiped down the same table for the 3rd time that evening, her hands trembling slightly from exhaustion. The diner was nearly empty, except for old Mr. Peterson nursing his coffee in the corner booth, and a young boy who had been sitting alone for over an hour. The kid couldn't have been more than 8 years old, with messy brown hair and clothes that looked like they hadn't been washed in days. She had noticed him earlier when he walked in, asking if he could just sit for a while because it was cold outside. Sarah had nodded and brought him a glass of water, even though she knew her boss Mike would be furious if he found out she was letting someone stay without ordering anything. The boy kept checking his watch and looking toward the door, like he was waiting for someone who would never come. As the clock struck 9, Sarah knew she had to close up soon. Her stomach growled loudly, reminding her that she had skipped lunch again to save money. The only food she had left was the chicken sandwich she had wrapped up earlier, her last meal until payday, which was still 3 days away. She had been surviving on crackers and instant noodles for weeks now. But somehow she always managed to smile at her customers. The little boy suddenly started crying soft sobs that broke Sarah's heart. She walked over and knelt beside his booth, asking if he was okay. He looked up at her with the biggest brown eyes she had ever seen and whispered that he was hungry and scared. His mom had dropped him off hours ago, saying she would be right back, but she never returned. Without hesitation, Sarah went to the kitchen and unwrapped her chicken sandwich. She heated it up, added some fries that were left over from the dinner rush, and brought it to the boy along with a tall glass of milk. The kid's face lit up like Christmas morning as he dove into the food. Sarah sat with him while he ate, asking about school and his favorite subjects, trying to keep his mind off whatever was happening in his life. The boy told her his name was Danny and that he loved drawing and wanted to be an artist someday. Sarah encouraged him, sharing stories about her own dreams of opening an art gallery before life got in the way. She had always been good at making people feel better, even when her own world was falling apart. As Danny finished eating, Sarah noticed something that made her blood run cold. The boy had a small scar above his left eyebrow, in the exact same spot her brother Jake had gotten one when they were kids, playing in their backyard 20 years ago. She stared at the boy's face, seeing something familiar in his features, but dismissing it as coincidence. Danny pulled out a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket and showed Sarah a drawing he had made. It was a picture of a man and woman with a little boy between them. The man in the drawing had the same dark hair and kind eyes that Sarah remembered from her childhood. The woman looked nothing like anyone Sarah knew, but the resemblance between the man and her missing brother was unmistakable. Sarah asked Danny about the drawing, and he explained that it was his family before his dad went away. His mom had told him that his father was on a long trip, but Danny suspected something was wrong. He missed his dad terribly, and had been carrying this drawing everywhere, hoping it would somehow bring him back. The pieces started falling into place in Sarah's mind. Her brother Jake had disappeared 5 years ago after struggling with addiction and mental health issues. The family had searched everywhere, filed missing person reports, and hired private investigators, but he had vanished without a trace. Sarah had never stopped hoping he would come home. But as years passed, she began to fear the worst. She asked Danny what his dad's name was, and when he said Jake Martinez, Sarah felt like the world stopped spinning. It was her brother's name, their family name. Danny was talking about her missing brother, about the man Sarah had been searching for all these years. This little boy sitting in front of her eating her last meal was her nephew. A nephew she never knew existed. Sarah tried to stay calm as she asked Danny more questions about his father. He described Jake perfectly, down to the small tattoo on his wrist that he had gotten in high school. Danny said his dad used to tell him stories about his sister Sarah, who worked in restaurants and dreamed of opening her own place someday. Jake had kept her memory alive, even while struggling with his own demons. The realization hit Sarah like a freight train. This hungry, scared little boy was family. Her brother's son had been sitting alone in her diner while she worried about her next meal, and he had no idea who she was. Danny had been abandoned, just like Jake had been abandoned by his addiction and circumstances beyond his control. Sarah excused herself and went to the back office where she called the police to report a child who appeared to be alone and in need of help. While she waited, she gathered her thoughts, trying to figure out how to tell Danny who she was and what this meant for both of them. She had been working multiple jobs, barely surviving herself, but she knew she would do whatever it took to help this boy. When the officers arrived, Sarah explained the situation as best she could. The social worker who came with them was kind but cautious, asking Danny questions about his mother and living situation. It became clear that this wasn't the first time Danny had been left alone for extended periods. His mother struggled with her own issues, and Danny had learned to take care of himself in ways no 8-year-old should have. Sarah told the social worker about her suspicion that Danny might be her nephew, and requested a DNA test to confirm their relationship. The process would take time. But in the meantime, Danny needed somewhere safe to stay. Sarah volunteered to be his temporary guardian, despite her financial struggles and tiny apartment. That night, as Danny slept on Sarah's couch, she stared at the drawing he had made of his family. She thought about all the times Jake had protected her when they were kids, how he had always shared his lunch money when she forgot hers at home. Now his son was in her care, and she had shared her last meal with him, just as Jake would have done. The DNA results came back 2 weeks later, confirming what Sarah already knew in her heart. Danny was indeed her nephew, the son of her missing brother Jake. The social worker explained that Danny's mother had struggled with substance abuse and had signed away her parental rights, wanting Danny to have a better life than she could provide. Sarah officially became Danny's guardian and slowly began the process of rebuilding their family. She told him stories about his father, about the good times before addiction took hold. Danny absorbed every word, hungry for connection to the parent he barely remembered. Sarah promised him that they would never stop looking for Jake, that someday their family might be whole again. Months passed, and Sarah worked even harder to provide for Danny. She took on extra shifts and side jobs, determined to give him the stability he had never known. Danny blossomed under her care. His grades improved, and he started drawing pictures of his new life with his Aunt Sarah. The fear and sadness in his eyes gradually replaced with hope and joy. One evening, almost a year after that fateful night at the diner, Sarah received a phone call that would change everything again. A rehabilitation center in Arizona was calling about a patient named Jake Martinez, who had been in their program for 8 months. He had finally gotten clean and was asking about his family, specifically mentioning a sister named Sarah who worked at a restaurant. The reunion was everything Sarah had dreamed of, and more. Jake had been living on the streets struggling with addiction when he learned about Danny's birth. He had tried to get clean multiple times, but always relapsed until he finally found a program that worked. The guilt over abandoning his son had motivated him to stay sober this time. Jake wept when he saw Danny again, his little boy who had grown so much in the time they were apart. Danny ran into his father's arms, and for the first time in years, their family felt complete. Sarah watched through tears as the three of them embraced, knowing that her simple act of kindness had set in motion a chain of events that brought them all together. Today, the Martinez family runs a small community center that provides meals and support for families in crisis. Sarah finally opened her art gallery in the back of the building where Danny teaches art classes to other kids who need hope. Jake works as a counselor helping people overcome addiction, using his own story as inspiration. The chicken sandwich that Sarah gave to Danny that cold Tuesday night cost her $15. Her entire food budget for 3 days. But that $15 act of kindness was worth more than money could ever measure. It brought a family back together and proved that sometimes the smallest gestures can create the biggest miracles. Sarah often thinks about that night and wonders what would have happened if she had ignored the crying boy, if she had saved her last meal for herself instead of giving it to a stranger. The universe had placed her exactly where she needed to be at exactly the right moment to save her nephew and ultimately reunite her family. This story reminds us that kindness is never wasted, that the people we help might be connected to us in ways we never imagined. Every act of compassion sends ripples through the world, touching lives in ways we may never fully understand. The next time you see someone in need, remember Sarah's story and consider that helping them might just change your life too. Danny still carries that crumpled drawing in his backpack, but now it's laminated, and he has added Sarah to the picture. The three of them stand together in his artwork, a family reunited by love, sacrifice, and the power of a simple meal shared with a stranger who turned out to be so much more. Sometimes the greatest treasures in life come disguised as ordinary moments. A tired waitress giving her last meal to a hungry child, a brother fighting his demons to return to his family, a little boy whose courage to accept help led him home. Again, the lesson is clear. Kindness creates miracles and love always finds a way. If this story touched your heart like it did ours, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who believes in second chances. And if you want more stories about love, resilience, and the quiet heroes among us, stay with us. There's always another miracle waiting to unfold.